fun little cami this week. It's Kwik Sew, $25.89. We're going to be doing this one in a small size, not the typical plus size that I do because it's for someone else. And it's one we don't have to do in a knit, so we're going to be sewing in this lovely satin. This is a bias cut pattern, so I will show you the layout when I go to lay it out. But first, I'm going to trace it off because this pattern comes from extra small to extra large, and I want to keep all of my sizes. So I'm going to trace off the size I'm working on, which this week is an extra small. It doesn't take very much fabric at all. Let me just look. Let's read it real quick. Yeah, 7/8 of a yard. Not much, and it's cut on the bias, so this should lay beautifully. I'm excited to show you. So I'm going to go trace it off. All right, I'm laying out my pieces for cutting, and this is my grain line. It's in pencil, it's a little hard to see, but it's bias. So if you look, see the whole pattern piece is skewed slightly, and the way to get your bias straight is to line up this with either your cross grain or your lengthwise grain. I'm using lengthwise here, and you just measure from your grain line over . Okay, I folded over what was left for my two pieces that go on the fold, so they're ready to go. And then I have this strap that I could lay anywhere in here. There's plenty of room up here, so I'm actually going to wait on the strap and cut it out up there so that I have this nice big chunk of satin left over that I could make a pocket square out of, or a tie, or a hair ribbon, or lots of things. So I'm just going to have a nice big piece left for something else. We're all cut out. Make sure when you choose a pattern, the pattern's going to be okay when skewed, when it's turned at an angle. Because if you choose a stripe, all of your stripes are going to run at an angle. If you do a plaid, your plaid will be on the bias, which will look cool, but you have to think about that. Sometimes you choose, like with animals or something like that, and all of your animals are sort of running off at a weird angle. So just think about that ahead of time. Florals are usually safest. They are often the easiest to do, but sometimes you'll get a pattern that's very directional, where all the flowers face one direction, and it will look very obvious if it's on an angle. So now we're ready to start sewing. There's lots of ways that this can be sewn together. The way they have you do it is they actually have you hem the very first thing. So before anything's put together, you hem, which is interesting. If you do that at the side seam when you go to sew it together, you're going to have a little bit of an unfinished look right down at the bottom side seam. The top will have the facing covering it, so it won't matter. The reason they do that is because they want you to do a rolled hem, a tiny little rolled hem, and it's very hard to do your rolled hem where the side seam comes together and you have this pointed angle. So if you do your rolled hem on each piece and then sew it together, you don't have to worry about that. So we will be doing that. I'm going to do it just like the pattern shows. Okay, so for the hem, I am going to serge my edge and then just roll it up one time to hem it instead of doing a full rolled hem. The other thing you could do is serge or zigzag that edge and apply lace. And then you could have a lace edge and not do the rolled hem. So you can choose. Do the rolled hem, serge or zigzag and turn up once for a hem, or serge or zigzag and apply a lace. Those are your hem options. So I'm going to serge mine really quickly. Make sure, because this is two things. This is bias, and you've got a curved edge. So don't pull. Alright, so here's, you can see it really good on the wrong side. See the serging? So now I can just turn that up right next to that serged edge and straight stitch it, and that will be my hem. So this is the back. I'm going to do the same thing for the front, and then I will show you how it looks after I have straight stitched it. After serging, I'm coming over to my ironing board. Make sure your iron's not too hot if you're using a synthetic like I am, and I am just turning up this hem right next to that serging line and giving it a quick little press. Just like this, so that it's super easy when I get to this sewing machine to sew. And when I sew this, and you may need to put a few pins in it, when I sew this, I'm going to sew it with the right side up, because it's just always best when you can to hem with the right side up. I've got my straight stitch foot on, and I'm sewing it almost 1/4 inch, which is why I like this foot, because it has the 1/4 inch markings on it. I'm just doing a straight stitch, and we're just going to stitch around. And again, you don't want to stretch, you just want to guide. That's how it's looking. Okay, I'm going to stitch it off and I'll show you what it looks like. So here's the hem finished. Ta-da. Very simple little straight hem. This is what it looks like on the back side, but it's not too bulky, which I really like, so it'll lay nice and flat. So now we're ready to pin our front to our back. Simple, simple, simple. So we're going to take our little front piece and our little back piece, and we're going to match them up at this little side seam, right where the two come together, right where our two hems come together. So we're going to pin it there, and then we're going to come to the top of our camisole, and we're going to pin it up here. Now if you notice, and I'm holding this on purpose, see how they don't quite match up when I hold it flat? And there's a reason. They're supposed to have a little bit of ease in the front. The front's a little longer for the bust line, and because it's bias cut, we can pin each end. Can you see the fullness on that side? And then we're just going to gently ease that in. See, I can pull and make it go away very gently at the sewing machine. The best way to do this is, whether you're sewing at your sewing machine or your serger, is to put the top facing down. Wherever your fullness is would go against the feed dogs. And what that does is it allows the feed dogs to do your easing for you. So I'm going to, we only want the fullness to be at the bust. We don't need it down in the waistline. So I'm going to pull this straight, no ease, for a few inches, and it actually has on the pattern markings. And then here you can see the extra fullness is all in the bust line now, and that's where I'm going to ease it in very gently at the serger. So I'm going to serge both of these. Because it has 1/4 inch seam allowance, I'm just going right with the edge of my knife. The serger does pretty much a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So I'm just going to do my 1/4 inch across on both sides, and then we'll be ready to do our straps and our facings, and our little camis done. I'm sewn together. So you can see I already have a nice little cami started. Here's my side seams. And what I did is, where the two overlapped, you can see I haven't trimmed it yet, so you can still see the little threads. I folded over and I top stitched in my old stitching line, just to make it nice and flat and make this edge look, see how pretty that edge looks now? It looks nice and finished, even though it was sewn after the hem. So now I've also taken my two straps, folded them lengthwise and sewn them. There's lots of ways you can turn this. You can sew one edge shut and push it with a pencil, something like that. I like to take a safety pin that's narrower than my tube, and I pin it in so that the head of the pin, see if you can see that, wants to go in. So see, the head of the pin just went in, and now when I push it, it's going to start pulling inside, and you just keep pushing and gently pulling the extra up, and eventually it'll come out the other end, and you've turned your snake inside out, as we said when I taught my classes. So your worm will go from wrong side to right side. So it takes a little bit, but you just keep pushing, and so we're going to do that for our two straps. So that's got to be done, and here's our facing. So we're going to take our two facing pieces, and the back facing kind of curves in, curves down, so I'm going to open up. Here's my little back facing, and I'm going to lay my back facing and my front facing on top of each other, the side seams, just like so. This is the short little seam we're going to sew. I'm going to just serge this at 1/4 inch on each end, and then I'm going to open it up, and I'm going to serge around the bottom edge, all the way around to finish that bottom edge. Okay, so those are the things I'm going to do next, and then I will come back and we'll put it all together and we'll have a little cami done. Let me say too, if you want to add lace to it, let's say you want to have lace around the neckline, add the lace before you put your little facing on, and depending on how you do the lace, you technically could maybe even not have a facing if you have the lace extend beyond the facing. There's some tricks that you could do. So think about it a little bit before you get going and put the whole thing together. You can always add lace at the end when it's completely finished too. That's always another option. Look at my cute little teeny tiny strap. So tiny. It took a little while to turn, I will say, but it's done. So this is the next thing. We are going to take our little teeny tiny strap and we are going to pin it to the front of our garment like this. See, there's actually a little spot. Hold this up. Can you see how the shape just made for the little strap to go in? When you do this, the seam needs to be rolled so that you see it when you're pinning, so that when you flip it up, you don't see it when you're wearing it. So I'm going to see it right now. So I'm going to put a pin in it. We're going to pin both straps on. And once the straps are on, let me show you the facing. Here's my nice little completed facing. Okay, and you can see I've finished the edge. That's what it looks like on the inside. So it's all put together. So the facing is going to go right sides together with the strap enclosed like this. So right now I only have the front strap on there. And we're going to need to pin it to the back too, like so. But what you want to do is make sure that it's loose and not caught anywhere except the two spots where you want to sew it in, okay? So I'm going to pin my front and my back on. Make sure you don't twist your strap. Make sure your seam stays nice and straight when you go to pin it on. The other thing you can do, and if my daughter were here, this is what I would do for her, is I would try this on her to make sure the strap is the right length. She's not here to try it on. She's an extra small, but she's tall. So I went ahead and cut the small length strap just so that there's a little extra. So I'm going to go ahead and sew it like that. It's going to be like 4 little stitches. If I need to pull it out, I'll do it in the back. Rip out those 4 little stitches and I can pull it tighter if it needs to be made smaller. So it's an easy adjustment if you do need to bring it in. If it needs to be longer though, you're kind of out of luck. You need to cut a longer strap. Let me talk to you about another option you can do with the straps. Because of how this is cut, you could actually have 4 straps. You could have a strap in the front and a strap in the back. Just sew them in at those points. And then after it's sewn, you can pull those straps together and tie them and have little ties at the top. You could use rat tail cord. You could use lace. You could use beautiful ribbon. You could do the same thing with ribbon and tie the ribbons at the top. You could do 2 straps so that you have a double strap that's side by side. The same with rat tail cord. You could braid them and have a braided strap. There's lots of pretty things you can do when you have just a little tiny skinny strap like that to make it a little more attractive or interesting. Okay, I'm going to sew this together and I'll show you how it looks. All right, my straps are pinned on. This is sort of how it looks. I hope you can see that. Here's the front, here's the back. And now I'm just going to lay my facing right over the top of that and stitch around it. Now you can serge this or you could machine sew it, whichever works for you. It doesn't really matter because it's a 1/4 inch sewing, 1/4 inch seam allowance. Just go around and the garment's done. After this I'm going to press it and then I may want to do a little top stitching around this upper neck edge just because it tends to make it lay flat and pretty. We'll see, but I'm going to go ahead and finish pinning this on and I'll show you how it looks finished. I'm done. We're done. Isn't this pretty? What a pretty simple little cami. You can see how nice the straps lay. I did give it a quick little press, but it hangs beautifully because it's bias cut is partly why. I would recommend you go in and just stitch down right here at this little seam, the facing, just to keep the facings down if you don't want to do a little top stitching along here, which I didn't. I just left it simple and plain because it just looks so pretty. It doesn't need anything else. So this is the front. Do a little rotate. And there's the back. Isn't that pretty? What a lovely little simple cami. A great wardrobe staple, simple cami. This pattern includes cute little shorts, so you can make a nice little pajama set out of something like this very easily with a little satin. It would also work. You could do this in like a tricot knit or something also. All right, happy sewing. See you next week.